Okay, this is Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters, 23 minutes past the top of the hour. And welcome Randy Holhut back to the show. So everything is blue, inside and outside. Does that seem a little bit like how people consume media these days? Only hearing what we want to hear?
Well, maybe, but this has been the last week or so has been particularly bad of the times we've been through since the election 2 years ago, presidential election 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, Jeff Potter's Voices section this week, with the help of all of our readers, is a particularly powerful one in dealing with the two atrocities last week, which is the Trump administration trying to erase transgender people from the existence, and the massacre that took place in Pittsburgh that left 11 people dead at a synagogue. And two acts that just, taken together, have really rattled a lot of people in thinking, is this the beginning of an even worse time? And it's in Brattleboro, of course, when something like this happens, the people gathering in Pliny Park for a vigil, and they did on Sunday, and we have a little thing from Becca Ballantyne there, who was leading a call and response with the 100 or so folks that gathered in the park with the candles. Mm-hmm. And she helped pull the event together. And just as she put it, I needed a place to put my grief, my heartache, my creeping sense of dread and hopefulness. And I didn't want our community to lose this moment for immediate grief and expressed outrage. I didn't want us to go on to the next news cycle. I wanted my community to come together immediately to denounce anti-Semitism. End of quote. Mm-hmm. And you think you wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah. Well, you put it so well when we were talking before we went back on air. You said, we're having conversations about things that we thought we were basically done talking about.
Nazis are bad.
Yep.
Black lives do matter. Anti-Semitism is wrong.
White supremacy is wrong.
White supremacy is wrong, and and celebrating diversity in all its forms. But no. But you figure, the patriarchy took a long time to establish and it's been in power a long time. It's going to take a long time to dismantle it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the last spasm of that now. But in Brattleboro, we like to think we're not complicit in this time of fear and hatred, and feeling like we need to do something about it. And I know it's kind of gathering together at Pliny Park like we always do. It seems kind of a futile gesture, but I think it matters. I think it matters for people to come together. I think it matters to have a public show of that this stuff isn't going to work, and that the haters can go back under their rocks. Thank you very much, and leave the rest of us alone to live our lives and to try and get through this together as one people.
Well, and gatherings like that, they serve that making connection, and they also can be quite powerful as long as we keep doing the work beyond that. That it's not just about the demonstration.
Well, it's the feeling that you're not alone, because Noam Chomsky once observed that the genius of a modern society is that it's designed to make everyone feel like they're alone and separated from each other, and thus feeling like they have no power.
Right.
And if you feel like you have no power, you won't do anything.
Right. Good point. Yes. Well, and I think it's also important demonstrations like this that you mentioned in Plenty Park are important too because while we like to think we are immune to these sorts of things in Brattleboro, this hatred, I had HB Lozito from Green Mountain Crossroads on the show Wednesday, and we had a great conversation, and they kept bringing up that point that how important connection is, and it goes back to what you said about the Chomsky quote, because when people feel disenfranchised or they feel disinfected or they feel cut out from their community, there's very little stopping them from hurting their community because there's no consequence when you're cut off from something. You don't necessarily see the pain of the other if you can put them in that category. And
Or if you put them in the other, it's easier to inflict the pain because they're not like you.
right, or they deserve it because they fit into whatever category you've put them into. Deserve it in air quotes. And we risk disconnection in Brattleboro just as much as any other place does.
Yes, and but disconnection and disaffection, those are the things that feed repression.
Yep. And right now we've got a president near the midterms who is working very hard to make sure that we as a culture focus on those others coming over the border and not on the violence that Americans are doing to Americans.
And we can talk about that in the next segment.
Yes, we can, because here it is, time for your news, Natalie Knowles. But before I send you off to Natalie Knowles, I just want to remind folks that today is being filmed by BCTV, and broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. All right. We are back, and this is Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters. Hey, Randy Holhut from the Commons.
Yes?
Did you know that the news update this hour is being brought to you by Brattleboro Subaru?
Why, no, I didn't.
It is, and at Brattleboro Subaru, their customer is their number one priority. And you can visit them online at brattleborosubaru.com or stop in and see them at 1234 Putney Road in Brattleboro. Wow, right?
Wow. That sounds better when you say it, though.
Yes, if the world of news ever fails me, I can read commercials on air. Should worse come to worse. No, I'm joking, but we are very happy for our sponsors.
Yes, we are. We must take care of the sponsors.
News costs money.
Yes, it does.
It's very human resource
Especially for your Commons, because I know how much everyone out there loves the Commons, because we hear it all the time. The Commons, I love that paper. Mm-hmm. So you have to remember, of course, that it's maybe free. You may not have to pay money for it when you pick it up off the stack at your favorite stop where you pick up the Commons, but it's not without cost.
Exactly. Yes, as I keep saying, if really good journalism is human intense, because you need a lot of reporters to cover things effectively.
Yes. And if we had some more money, we could have more reporters.
There's always that.
So go to donate.commonsnews.org and find out how, if you like what we're doing, help us to keep doing it.
And on that note, because one of the busiest times of the years after town meeting day is elections for reporters, Randy.
Between the two of us, you had the big race in Windham County, the Windham one race between Sarah Coffey and Patrick Gilligan, and I had the open mic night for democracy over at the Green Mountain Chapel, and you see the faces of democracy. They're on the front page in all their glory.
Hey, did you have a chance to see? I was handing in a deadline for a freelance project, so I missed the debate on WCIX between Hallquist and Scott. But what did you
Well,
get a
that was
chance to see
last
it?
week. This week it was on Channel 5.
Oh, on Channel 5, sorry.
And Channel 31 down here. And streaming on your computer, which is how I saw it, because I can't get it on our cable system.
Mm-hmm. So Channel 5.
It was a 1-hour debate, which doesn't give you a lot of time. And Stuart Ledbetter, because most of us down here know him from Vermont This Week, as the host. It was kind of, I thought the line of question was a little more designed to try and provoke a fight between the two of them, and they were a little testier than normal. But I chalked that up to it's a few days before the end of the campaign, and both of them are a little tired. Although
nobody's been sleeping, in other words.
Christine more than Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many minds were changed. They kind of talked about taxes. They tried I think it was one of the questions, of course, asking Christine, do you promise not to raise taxes? And, she swatted that away like any thinking politician would. You don't promise.
You don't promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because things change.
Well, exactly. And Vermont does have to respond. We are part of a bigger system, so we have to respond to things like federal tax codes and changes at the federal level, and funding changes from the federal level and all those things.
Or the occasional disaster.
But, yeah, which we seem to be having more and more of.
Oh, from the Chinese hoax?
Oh!
Known as climate change?
That one! I had to think, I've heard, Trump has been blaming so many other countries for everything lately. I had to remember which particular hoax it was.
Yeah, so that was that one. And then, of course, the angry horde of scary brown people coming over the border that are going to kill us all.
Uh-huh. Right.
Kill us all.
Because all the mass shootings recently in the United States have been committed by people coming over the border. Oh, wait. No, they haven't.
No, they are white people.
But, as you and I have talked before, we are not always as media literate in this country as we like to think we are. And there's a lot of people who are easily manipulated, unfortunately.
Well, particularly if you're kind of stewing in the Fox News realm, where they're a funhouse mirror kind of a reality. But I mean, the truth is, the scary caravan of brown people is nowhere near the United States right now. Won't be here for a while. Most of them will probably stay in Mexico. A few may get to the border, and under international law, they're entitled to ask for asylum. Mm-hmm. Now, our president is thinking, no, don't have to give you asylum. No, we're going to do away with birthright citizenship because I can repeal the Constitution with just a stroke of my pen.
Yeah, no.
No.
No. Let's make that very clear. No.
No, I can send 15,000 soldiers to the border to help protect us from the invasion of scary brown people. No, you're prohibited from federal law from engaging in any kind of law enforcement because the Posse Comitatus Act, which says it's up to the local authorities to carry out laws.
Right.
So they're just going to be there for show. Although he was saying yesterday that if they threw rocks at him, he'd consider them rifle shots and they should shoot them. Shoot the scary brown people if they throw rocks at soldiers or something. And on it goes. Just throw that latest log on the fire of hatred, of just and lies and fear, and that's because that seems to be all the Republicans have nationally going from is hatred, fear, and lies. Lying about their support for the Affordable Care Act, they don't support it. Lying about protecting Medicare, they want to gut it. Lying about immigration law, there's fewer people coming into this country than in years. There's just lie after lie after lie after lie after lie, and that's part of the game. You lie enough, and you try to swat the lies away, and they start piling up, and you can't keep up with it all because you're just lying too much. Mm-hmm. And I've, in my living memory, I've never seen a prominent politician and leader lie consistently,
so
persistently, and just a willing denial of reality than our current president.
Well, and this is, yes, I agree with you, but I also feel that, people are letting him do this. There are plenty of people in Washington who could reel him back even more, and yet they're not. When do you think this shift happened? This shift that we're seeing in our politics towards more rancor, more hatred, but even more than that, this weird mixing of emotion over facts.
Well, let's start back in the 70s with the rise of the new right, and kind of the ashes of the Goldwater campaign from 1964. Mm-hmm. And how conservatives decided to play the long game and to create parallel institutions where they could build up the ideological as well as legislative as well as legal muscle to get through their agenda. And while the left just didn't kind of notice or wasn't paying attention, all of a sudden we had these institutions come up, and just in time for a willing vessel to carry them out, which was Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And with each successive election, it just got more and more blatant. And one dominant theme is that Democrats are not a legitimate political party, and they've been they should be attacked and belittled and not seen to have any legitimacy at all. Mm-hmm. And it's gone from just verbal attacks to the lock 'em up chants at the Trump rallies. Mm-hmm. I mean, we haven't seen that in Vermont at least, and that's a good thing. And thankfully, our campaigns are still have some basis about them. Mm-hmm. But out there beyond beyond the friendly confines of Vermont, it's pretty dismal. Mm-hmm. The good news, however, is early voting has been off the charts everywhere in the United States, where where it's been allowed. Since another thing that seemed to be on the Republican playbook is discourage people from voting, because voting is bad. At least if it's not our voters. So if you're poor, if you're a person of color, if you're polling place probably has fewer voting stations. You probably have fewer polling places in your town, and you probably are looking at waiting in line for hours to vote. Mm-hmm. You don't see much of that in say white areas.
Right. Well, and waiting hours in line to vote is tough, especially if someone has to take time off of work. Mm-hmm. And they're earning by the hour,
among other things. But that's why the early voting has been so important, and why, of course, a lot of the Republican folk have been trying to discourage that. But it's been there is going to I don't know for sure what's going to happen on Tuesday. If you go by the amount of enthusiasm there could be a big change in Washington come the next time we talk.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a big change in Vermont the next time we talk. But the main thing is, if you haven't voted yet, especially in Vermont, there's no excuse for you not to vote in Vermont, since this is our state, to its credit, is probably the easiest state to vote in the country.
Yeah, Jim Kondo, Secretary of State, has worked really hard at lowering the barriers to voting.
And that's why we have 92% of Vermonters registered to vote. And with same-day voter registration, with how easy it is to do early voting, with the presumption that, when in doubt, you can vote. Mm-hmm. And our elections are also pretty secure in terms of we're not using the kinds of machines that Russians and other nefarious folk could hack and tamper with.
And we still have paper ballots, so there's still a paper trail. And
yes,
town clerks
and all
are
those
required
things.
to hold on to them.
But I really think, if you were unhappy with the results on that dark Tuesday in November in 2018. I mean, 2016, rather,
okay,
the presidential election. If you weren't happy with how things are turned out, here's your chance to get a do-over. Mm-hmm. Here's your chance to perhaps change things, but
right.
You really have to be part of it, and it's easy. Please vote.
Please vote. Yes, we can't say it enough. Please vote.
Here at the Commons, we can't endorse candidates because of our nonprofit status, but we can endorse democracy, and democracy depends on everybody being informed, making good choices, and getting involved.
And on that note, that was a beautiful note to end on. Thank you, Randy Holhut from the Commons.
And thank you, Olga Peters from Green Mountain Mornings, and we'll talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it. Take care.
Okay.